Welcome, everyone, to the fourth episode of the Fired Up and Plugged In podcast powered by Emergency Reporting. This is the podcast for all 21st century fire and EMS personnel. I'm Tom Lewis, Enterprise Training Manager and the podcast producer. Our topic today is measuring your organizational performance from the customer's perspective. Our host is retired Fire Chief Randy Bruegman. During his 40-year career in local government, Chief Bruegman was the president of the International Association of Fire Chiefs from 2002 to 2003, and also served as the president of the board of directors for the Center for Public Safety Excellence from 2004 to 2017. We at Emergency Reporting are grateful to have him as a member of our customer advisory board. Our guest today is a 36-year veteran of the fire service, Chief Micheal Despain, who recently retired as the fire chief of Lincoln, Nebraska. During his career, he also served as the chief of department at Clovis, California, and was the deputy chief at Fresno, California. So thank you all for being here today. Chief Bruegman, let's start the podcast.
Great. Thanks, Tom, for the introduction, and good day, everyone, and welcome to another session of Fired Up and Plugged In. And it's my pleasure to have Chief Mike Despain join us today. I had the opportunity to work with Mike in Fresno for about three and a half years before he kicked me out, and I had to, migrate to Southern California. But he's just an exceptional leader, has been in the fire service for many years, and I think one of his accolades is he's kind of been a real leader in the industry about performance measurement, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how you measure your organizational performance, not from our perspective, but from the customer's perspective, and that's becoming even more important as we move farther into the 21st century. So welcome, Mike. Appreciate you being here this morning.
Thank you, Randy. Much appreciated.
Yeah. So let's get started. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background and your experience, and because I think the audience would be, very interested to hear that.
Yeah. Well, started my career in the early 80s, worked my way around a number of agencies throughout California, including some time with the city of Fresno, working with you and a great team there. And then in 2013, I went to the 2012, went to the city of Clovis and was the fire chief there for a number of years. And then in 2016, I had an opportunity to get out of California and go to Lincoln, Nebraska, and spent some years there, and had a great team there, was able to kind of experience, just something a little bit outside of California, but a little bit of difference in terms of culture and community expectation. And then retired about a year ago, but since then I've worked a couple of interim fire chief jobs that kind of come up, so I've not done a good job with retirement, but I've enjoyed that different perspective every place I've worked and the people that I've worked for. So.
And tell us a little bit about, I think you've led two organizations through the accreditation process.
Yeah, so I was fortunate to be with City of Clovis twice. So once as an earlier rank, and then led it as fire chief. So went through accreditation back in the early 2000s when accreditation was first coming out. I think Clovis was the second agency in California to get accredited. So definitely different over the years. That process has changed. Led it again in 2013, and then was fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, when I showed up in Lincoln, that they were about due for another cycle of accreditation. In fact, both agencies I kind of came in with were ready to go, and maybe there was a few things that needed to be worked on. So good staff, they scrambled, they got it together and put it together. Lincoln has the privilege of being one of the longest agencies in terms of accreditation. They were one of the first ones during the beta, the beta test back in the late 90s. And they continue to, both agencies continue to thrive. They've adopted accreditation, not necessarily as a goal, but as a process. So they understand performance management and performance measurement and what it means.
Yeah, I think that's pretty evident. And, I remember having some conversations with Chief Merwick, God rest his soul. We just lost him here last year, but he was really a pioneer from Lincoln in the accreditation process. He was one of the first chiefs to step up and say, he could see the benefit, and he says, we'll be on board to help out. And they actually were one of the beta test sites for the entire system before it was ever launched internationally. So Lincoln's had a long history with that process. But it kind of plays into what we're going to talk about today, and that is, how you measure your performance as an organization. We both had the opportunity to work on the 21st century white paper here that was released last year that really focused on the 8 critical issues that we felt were going to kind of impact the fire and emergency services over the next 30 years. And of course, one of those is data, the robust use of the data and how we use that to really articulate what we're doing organizationally. And I noted that in Lincoln's strategic plan that you built that whole plan around 3 goals. And they were very simple, and I want you to talk about those. And it was save, serve, and value. So could you elaborate a little bit on how you came to that process and, share with the audience, kind of how that foundational piece then led to the build out of your strategic plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime you're leading organizational change, you've got to get everybody kind of on the same page, labor, your staff, the community, everybody's got to kind of work together. Just like the 21st century white paper, we're taking a lot of data from a lot of people. You have to synthesize it somehow to understand. You got to kind of put it in boxes so we understand the boxes. And that just seemed the save, serve, value just seemed like the best way to do it in layman's terms, in very short terms. Save was all the kind of the core elements we do. We save property, we save lives, and we might expand that to save pets, save businesses, those kind of things. So that was that piece, and of course save firefighters. The serve was kind of the things we do a little bit peripheral to that. So think of it as how do we help our firefighters have a better quality of life? How do we have our community have a better quality of life? So we save their life, but now we want a better quality of life. And then the value statement at the end was kind of tying them together. You could do a lot of great things and you could have a lot of great data to prove it, but if you can't get the message across to the community, then you're kind of behind the power curve a little bit. In fact, it's sad, but you could actually have good marketing and maybe even not the best data, and for a while you can probably hold your own. So the marketing is that bridge between when the community looks at us from the outside, they don't really understand what we do. They don't fully understand what we do, and from us on the inside, we can't really explain it. So we try and bridge that gap. So the value statement was just ways that we try and bridge that gap so that they understand the value proposition of what's it cost to operate the fire department, what do you get for the value, what happens if you shut it down, what would life be like without one? And that's basically the 3 boxes we try to create.
So you created the 3 boxes, but I think you also did something that was many departments don't do, some do, but that you actually engaged the community.
Yeah, so the community-driven strategic plan was important for us, and even though that's a requirement for accreditation now in the 9th and 10th editions, you have to do that. I recognize the importance of that many years ago, because I always got in the same conversation with elected officials or community leaders of trying to, how do we explain to them what we do and bridging that gap? And so there was this thought that if we could use we used to do like citizen academies, that kind of stuff, to try and educate them a little bit more. Well, let's just bridge those two. Let's do a citizen academy and then help them align us within the strategic planning piece. And so that was extremely valuable. We were very open with that process, and I would say a little bit brave because we brought labor in, which doesn't, sometimes they have a different perspective than maybe management or city hall. And then we brought in the community, and we were very open in terms of that had to be a diverse group. It had to represent cross section of society, not just handpicked friends, that kind of thing. And we actually invited in groups of people that were pretty vocal that they didn't like the fire department and maybe government in general. But we would bring that group in just to say, look, here's your chance to kind of weigh in on what we do, how we do it, what's important to you, what do you not like. And so at the end of the day, the beauty of that one was we got that entire group, and I think we had 22, 23 people on that group. All of them, labor, management, everybody had 100% agreement on at least the top 11 strategic initiatives. So think of it as save, serve, value. Underneath them had 3 or 4 strategic initiatives, 100% agreement. Now, when we get deeper into it, that's where you have the finesse of labor negotiations and, budgeting and priority, that kind of stuff. But that's powerful when you get that many people all agreeing with what you do. When they're still engaged, we report back to them every year. And that's one of our measurements was we want to get approval rating from that same group of people that said, do A, B, and C. We come back to them and say, hey, we did A, we did B, we didn't quite get C done, but explain why, and get their approval to like, yep, keep going with the plan or change the plan. So it's been powerful.
Yeah, we did something similar in Anaheim where we had brought in community representatives and labor and some of our department directors. It was a unique experience.
Right.
There were, I'm sure you had the same situation, same kind of a result. There were multiple arguments through the day.
Yeah.
Especially from the business owners and some of our labor leaders and just our citizenry going, why do you do it that way?
Right.
Why do you have to do it this way, and why can't we do it, another way? And so, but it was good to get their investment in kind of where the organization was going, and I think you found that to be the same case.
Yeah, I highly recommend it to anyone that does, and I help other agencies with strategic planning. I just tell them you don't have to have the community, unless you're going to go through accreditation. You don't have to have the community in, but it's like for all the effort you're going to put into it, get the benefit on the back end. And so pretty much on board.
Yeah, and I think there's some that they bring a unique perspective. They're our customers.
They are our boss. Yeah.
And so I mean, we should do that. I mean, that's just good business. But I'm interested in the value proposition as you stated it, and how do you market your services and demonstrate the value of the department to the community as a whole?
Yeah, we have a couple different ways we do that, but we try and look at it as kind of that, what's in it for me? So we just kind of use that WIFM acronym, everything we do. What's in it for me? So we describe things in terms of outcomes every chance we get. A good example would be cardiac survival rate. Well, there's a big difference between surviving a cardiac event neurologically intact or not neurologically intact. I mean, yeah, we saved your life, but there's a quality of life issue that's maybe deficient there. So we would just talk about how we're going to measure performance, and do you want to survive the cardiac event neurologically intact or not? Because if not, maybe the community prefers not to survive it. That investment is, well, if I'm not going to survive neurologically intact, then maybe I want to invest somewhere else. And that resonated with the community. In fact, I think Lincoln had I think in 2019, they had the second best cardiac survival rate for a city their size in the United States. So that value proposition resonated through the whole community, resonated with bystander CPR, pulse point, the firefighters, high performance CPR, all of that. So, but within the value statement, there's also the component of money. So what does that cost you? So we talk about in terms of value, there's 2 pockets. There's the pocket that pays taxes and the pockets that pays insurance. So we just try and look at how we measure, how we impact that. What's the cost per capita? How much do you really pay for your service? What do you pay for insurance if we provide a higher level or a lower level or disappeared altogether? And then kind of the final one is, what does it cost? Where do you want that threshold to be? Because it's a spectrum. It's not you have to be one way or the other. There's no prescriptive measurement for fire agency. In fact, there's really not a federal law that says you have to have a fire department all. That's usually a local decision, and people put it in their municipal code or their charter. So that value statement says, okay, well, we want to try and put downward pressure on insurance. We try and measure that. We want to try and keep cost per capita low. We know it's gonna cost more money over time, but if we can keep it lower than population growth, and we can keep instances of fire lower than population growth, I mean, there's some capacity to address the need. If any of those go past it, fires or costs, then we're in a losing battle.
So those are discussions that you had with your strategic group. How do you get that type of message out, to the whole of the population?
Yeah, so part of that value statement is also the marketing piece. So we put in so we did a number of things, and it's probably a laundry list, but kind of the top tier ones was we put in a full-time PIO just to make sure we were marketing correctly. And, every time there's a fire, there's a little fire prevention story or a factoid or something that might go in there. And social media you got to stay on top of that. That's not like the PIOs back in the day. Those PIOs they're busy. I mean, they're constantly trying to communicate and stay on top of things. We do it through an annual report. We do it through, some third party processes like What Works Cities, where you have to, disclose your performance across the community. And there's a different audience for that. It's a wider audience for that one. But I think the best one is we now have, and this may be, the numbers may be off a little bit, but, we had 20, 25 people go through that strategic planning process that all went out and told their friends and family what they learned. And those friends and families told their friends and families. So the word of mouth in the community was pretty powerful, and still is today, because those people will go to council and they'll address issues of concern because they know more than the average person, and they have a group of followers that they're influential people in their own circles.
So did you create a way that an average citizen, if they heard about this, could sign up to get updated information about your strategic planning process and your performance measurements?
Yeah, so website, a couple of different, there's a website that does just performance management. Then we have our own website with our documents and our annual report. Through the social media app, we'll take a little piece and throw it out. We have a monthly, and I'm not there now, but we had a monthly closed circuit, kind of in-house TV station that we did a broadcast on, and that would go out and you could see it on YouTube, those kind of things. So we had probably 5 or 6, 7 different ways to communicate that information kind of constantly. Radio program once a month, a TV program once a month. So it was, but that kind of goes back to that. If you're doing all the right things, but you can't get your message out, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. So you got to market.
Yeah, it's a combination of both, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We've discussed on many occasions over a cup of coffee or other beverage about the importance of not only just measuring your raw data that comes in, but also looking at the outcomes of what you're trying to achieve and measuring that organizational performance. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the cardiac survival rate's probably a good example again, where you can do data and stats all day long, but for the person that had it and for the family, the only thing that matters is, did they survive neurologically intact? They don't care what your turnout time was. They don't care how long it takes to process a call. All they care about is, did my family member survive, and a quality of life issue. So we just take those same outcomes in a lot of different realms. We might do it in cost per capita measurement. We might do it in stopping fires at room of origin. We might do it at keeping businesses in business. So part of our goal is, if there's a fire in a business, is make sure that business stays in business. So there's a lot to that. It's not about staffing and response time. It's about fire prevention. It's about public education. It's about engineering. It's about relationships and marketing and turnout time and 911. When the crews get on scene, have good equipment, do a good job, be safe. Think about not just putting the fire out and then kind of high-fiving each other. It's put the fire out and then get get it to the point where people are not displaced any longer than they need to, because that's a huge cost that people don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
A business owner knows it because they might be out of business, and they know it intimately, but just the cost of a single family home is horrendous for the people impacted. Maybe not necessarily for the community, but a business could be detrimental to the community.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we've talked a couple of times about, the importance of making sure that you put the right data down on your final report. Could you speak a little bit about that and how that could impact not only a business owner, but a homeowner if we just pencil whip what the loss was, because that's pretty important.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more evident because we have much more access to data on the back end of what fire loss actually is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's people much smarter than me that have looked at this data across the board, and it's pretty evident that we're abysmal at really documenting what fire loss is, and not just as a percentage, but even as a dollar value. And so my experience has been, when we were in the olden days, we would go to fight fire, and if a house was 50% damaged, we would say, hey, we saved the other 50. We'd take the price of the house, divide it in half, there you go. Mm-hmm. And there was probably a little bit of math to that, was probably not that far off back 30 years ago, but now it's incredibly different with the insurance industry. So a house with 30% damage is essentially 100% damage. In fact, it's probably 150% loss in terms of the value of the house, because now the entire house has to be gutted or torn down, mold, electrical issues, liability. And then it may take a year and a half before they actually can occupy the building again, because there's so much bureaucracy that goes to that system. And a lot of it is people are underinsured. They don't recognize what a small fire, if we don't stop it at room of origin and the house isn't on the ground, anywhere in between is really not what we prepare for. So it may stay vacated, vacant, attractive nuisance type thing for a long time, blighted neighborhood type thing. Mm-hmm. But one of the complaints we get is that when the customer compares what the insurance or the adjuster says the loss is to what the fire report says, they think somebody's scamming them, because we're typically, half or a third of what the true value is for replacement. And that's sad, because it reflects bad on us when we kind of look at the end result of the customer. And then the other issue is it complicates the whole system as far as how quickly they can get a settlement and get the house fixed and everybody can get back to their normal life. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very important point, and one that oftentimes we in the fire service, especially the officers that are on scene, incident commanders, if they're the ones that assess that valuation, don't think about. And if you don't have a really good community risk reduction or fire prevention bureau where they're going to go back and follow up and get the real loss identified in the report, it can create a real issue for the homeowner or the business owner. So.
Yeah, and the other issue is be careful to don't try, if you try and fix it overnight, be consistent, because what'll happen is if you're the fire chief, one of the outcomes that you deal with is what's the fire loss for the year. So if you right size your process overnight, be careful, make sure you communicate that, because overnight you're going to go, how did fire loss in my community go up by a factor of 2 or 3 times? Yeah. It didn't. It's a better reflection of what the true cost and impact is. And so be sure you're ready for that. Otherwise, one of the outcomes for you is you won't have a job as the fire chief.
Well, that's true. But yeah, I mean, we don't measure the subsequent costs that are really the total cost of fire, after an incident happens. We don't measure that the business out of business for 6 weeks and lost wages and lost tax base and all of that. So we should have a methodology to do that, because I think it would help us to frame up our value proposition better in our communities, but we don't do a very good job of that. So where do you see the future of the fire and emergency services over the next decade and then beyond?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate to be part of that group that wrote the 21st Century White Paper, and all of us, all had a little bit different perspective on what the future would hold. But where we aligned was that everyone, almost kind of with a wink in our eye, was no one could argue that the future is going to be a little dark if we don't control our finances and what it actually costs to operate the emergency services. So controlling cost, and whether that's pension and payroll, lawsuits, injuries, all of that stuff, price of equipment. We've just really got to watch that line, because economically, we are seen as not necessarily an economic generator of money, but we kind of suck it out of other areas, and so we got to watch that from a sustainability aspect. But for the most part, the disruptive things are what I see coming in particular, and I feel very confident that this is going to happen. It's just, will it happen next year or 10 years from now? But I don't think it's 30. I think you're going to see expanded use of like robotics. So think of it as you're on a fire engine and you're 4 staffed, but 2 in the back are on battery packs, and they're just think of, we've been doing it with bomb robots downrange for years. It's not new, and the military already has the technology. So in short, give or take high temperature exposure, the technology is already there. Now it's got to be adopted, it's got to be widespread, it's got to be cost effective. So I tell people joining the fire service, it's like, if you want to finish out your career as a firefighter, be very good at fixing robots, is kind of what I tell them. So.
No, I think that's, I think just one aspect of, I would agree with that. I think that the technology that will be applied in our homes and businesses will further reduce the rates of fire. So I think the dynamic of what the fire and emergency services is going to do in the future is going to change quite dramatically over the next, probably, it's not going to take 30 years. I really think in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to see some significant shifts. So, and I think the importance of what we're talking about today, about how we measure our performance from a customer perspective, is going to become even more critical as we move, farther into the century.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So anything that you would like to, final thoughts for today?
Well, for those people that are interested in learning more about how Lincoln Fire reached out to the community, kind of set up that community-driven strategic plan, feel free to reach out through ER, reach out to me direct, and I'm on LinkedIn if you want to reach me on LinkedIn, and I can send you a little bit of the info to help you kind of design your own system. A lot of the documents that we're talking about are still available online with Lincoln Fire and Rescue. They just go to their web page. They have little things as documents, and a lot of that stuff is all free. So we kind of throw the value out to rising tide lifts all ships, so to speak. So happy to share that out to as many people as we can while those documents are on there. I think they're getting ready to do another round of strategic planning here pretty soon, because the goal is to don't wait, especially if you're going through accreditation, don't wait till 6 months before your documents are due to do this. Do it early and have a year or two of some performance, show some movement. So think of it as every 2.5 years, do your strategic planning, community driven piece, and then a year or two later, do your accreditation process, and then repeat the cycle. So that way, so people have a chance to do it right. You're not under pressure. You can bring people along with you, bring your people, your staff and your labor group and those kind of people along with you. So those documents are available, and feel free to reach out if we can help out.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It was great information, and I look forward to having you back in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an honor. Thanks, Randy.
Okay. Thank you.